Thank you so much, everybody. The magic of live television. It's fascinating. Thank you so much, everybody in the studio audience and those of you watching on TV for being with us. My name is Jason. I'm your cruise host. And here we are on our last all-access pass of the cruise. I know it's crazy how quickly it goes by. So we saved a great band for the end, someone I know everyone's interested in. Please welcome the Yardbirds to the stage with me. First and foremost, I just said a second ago off camera, thank you so much for being here. Not only for the chat, but on the cruise. How's it been so far, roaming around the Flower Power cruise?
Very nice energy. Nice atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, having played in that era, how do you rank the fans today? The same fans, just slightly aged.
Well, they're just as enthusiastic as ever.
That's what we like to hear. That's the beauty of it right there. Just as feisty as, yeah, like a fine wine, yeah. Just as feisty as ever. Now, if you'd be so kind for us, sir, take us back a few years. How did the Yardbirds come together? You've had some huge names in the band over the years.
Well, it's more than a few years, I think.
I didn't want to age you. I thought, I'd let you do it.
Yeah, it's about 1963. We came together. We all lived around southwest London, the suburbs. We all used to hang out in the same sort of pubs, particular pubs where sort of bohemian type people went. Basically, it was three guys from art school, Kingston Art School, which was in southwest London, which was like different to a high school. It was like a bit like high school dropouts,
Oh, yeah. It's art school. Yeah.
People that wanted to study, they said, "Oh, we want to study art," but they weren't quite as clever as people like me and Paul Samuel Smith. We went to the high school, and we suddenly heard this great blues music coming in from the US. The black music, and
that was Howlin' Wolf and kind of that.
Yeah, Howlin'
Muddy
Wolf,
Waters.
Muddy Waters, Bo Diddley, Chuck Berry, all those guys. It sort of came on. It came into England, and it was very underground. You didn't hear it on the radio or TV, and you had to go to special shops.
I was going to say, how'd you get a hold of it? How did you?
Yeah,
find it?
It was like an album was precious, and it got banded around.
Everyone handed it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And there was only a couple of jazz record shops in London where you could buy that sort of music. And then we saw the Rolling Stones. They used to play down near us, and they were great. They were really new, something really innovative.
In the early '60s, they were just starting. I mean, they weren't in their heyday yet. They were still kind of starting out as well.
Yeah, that's right. And we actually, in the end, we formed the band. In the end, we got the gig that they had in a place called the Crawdaddy Club, which was in a place called Richmond, which is in southwest London. And that was our sort of break, because we went to see the manager of the club. It was a guy called Giorgio Gamalski, who was a sort of mixed European sort of guy, Russian, Swiss, Italian, all mixed up.
As you do, you're going to own a club.
With a big beard, and he actually became our manager in the end.
That's cool. So he not only signed you to the club, but then became your manager.
Yes.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, so we got the gig in the club, and I remember he once told me how he booked us. He came to see us doing an audition, and he came to a rehearsal in Richmond, and he said, I was walking up the stairs, and he said, "I heard you doing this rave up or whatever, this big build up on the bass and drums." And he said, "I thought you were that much different from the Rolling Stones that I decided to book you there and then."
Perfect. That's how it's supposed to happen, right?
Yeah.
You got to be in the right place at the right time.
So he didn't want a band that was exactly the same,
Sure.
Just some band that was a
little bit
different.
unique, something a little different.
Yeah.
And then you guys have had some big names. I mean, throughout the years, obviously, in those early years, especially before everyone was becoming a big star. I mean, you had some people who later went on to great things. form your band. Tell us a little bit about those early years with the different musicians you had.
Well, the first lead guitarist was actually a guy called Topham, who was also at Kingston Art School, and he was a very good artist, and he was a bit younger than the rest of us, and he was quite good at studying the art. And his parents, they were very against him joining a band, sort of hooligans like us.
Well,
and
all those high school dropouts,
That's it. And they wanted him to study the art. They thought he had a future, and they didn't want him to join a band. So they put pressure on him, and he had to leave. And then Chris and Keith, they knew another guy at the art school called Clapton. And so they
another high school dropout.
They said, this Clapton guy, he's pretty good. We should try him out. So he came down, and he got the job.
He was pretty good, yeah.
But he already had a bit of a profile. He was sort of well known locally, and you could tell he was quite dedicated and quite keen to
be somebody and do something, yeah.
So he joined, and then we went on, and finally Giorgio, as our manager, got us a record contract, and it was just, in those days there were only two real record companies. That was Decca and EMI. And so he thought, the Rolling Stones were on Decca, so I'll put them on EMI. So he got us a record deal, and we did a few records that weren't hits. And finally, we were playing actually with the Beatles at their Christmas show. They used to do a Christmas show every year, and this year they were doing it. I think it was 1964, and they were doing it at a place called Hammersmith Odeon, that was quite near where we lived, and we were chosen as a local band, the up-and-coming band to play on the bill. And there happened to be a publisher there that had a demo record. It was a little acetate disc that they used to pass around to groups to record the songs. And it was For Your Love by Graham Gouldman, who was an up-and-coming singer-songwriter from Manchester. And so we finally got this record, and we all liked it, apart from Eric. He said, it's not very bluesy, it's not my sort of thing. And also he had some issues with one of the other guys. So in the end, we recorded the song, and it became a big hit, and he decided to leave, which was quite daring in a way, but there we are. And we wanted to get Jimmy Page in the band, who used to come and see us. And he was pally with Giorgio, and he used to come to some of our gigs, and we tried Jimmy Page. And Jimmy was doing a lot of sessions in London. He was recording on other people's records, all sorts of records he was playing on, not just rock and roll.
Good session musicians are an art. I mean, there's a whole career in, when he says a session musician or a studio musician, there's a ton of world-class musicians that fans would never recognize. But if they walked into a room full of superstar musicians, recognize them in a heartbeat, because, oh my God, he played on yada 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 yada. He played on everybody's album. So when Jim says session guys or recording guys, often those are hugely popular musicians with musicians.
Yeah, well, it's funny because John here, he knows much more than me about who played on what, and he's always telling me, "Oh yeah, this record Jimmy Page played on that,"
What was the one we heard yesterday? What was it? Hermits.
You should be on. Go ahead and just.
It was Hermits. Mrs. Brown, you've got a lovely daughter. Yeah. And zillions of others. I mean, my goodness.
But he played on
loads of songs.
Yeah, he played on like Gene Pitney, 24 Hours from
yeah.
Tulsa, and Burt Bacharach he played with. And
Little help from my
he
friends,
played
like Joe
with Zeppelin
Cocker.
as well.
Zeppelin, yeah. Shocking.
Lots of great stuff.
Zeppelin, who's that? I don't know who that. Yeah. The unknown band. And okay, so Jimmy Page, you invite him in to play a little bit with you guys.
Yeah, well, we wanted him to join, but he was so busy. Yeah, I got lost, didn't I? So
Sorry,
he was
I took it off track.
He was so busy doing sessions, he didn't want to join a band. So he recommended this guy called Jeff Beck.
Who?
Jeff Beck.
Oh, Jeff Beck. Oh, sorry.
Well, we'd never heard of him, you know. Jeff Beck, who's he?
Yeah.
He came down, and it was this dirty, you know, sort of grubby guy with all dirty old jeans.
Dirty, grubby guy.
And
Just a dirty, grubby guy.
And long hair, and, you know, he looked like he just got out from under a car.
Damn those hippies. Dirty hippies.
And then he started to play, and it was like wonderful. And I thought, oh my God, this guy can play. So he got the job. And
who needs Clapton or this guy Page? We've got, yeah.
And of course, the funniest thing was that Giorgio, he got Chris to take Jeff down to Carnaby Street and get him some clothes. And
You cleaned him up. You made Jeff Beck presentable.
Yeah, get him a haircut and getting some mod clothes, and he came back looking totally different. Really funny.
Which was the goal at that point. Yeah, you had to dress him up.
Yeah. And so we went from there, and with Jeff in the band, that was the most successful lineup, because we had all the hits. Then we had Heart Full of Soul and Over Under Sideways Down, Shapes of Things. I'm a Man.
Forgive me. When did you guys split? It was relatively early. You weren't like that. That lineup wasn't together too long, right? I mean, before the band kind of started.
Yeah. In the end, Paul Samuel Smith, the bass player, he left. It was too much for him, because we were just traveling the whole time,
Sure.
and it was full on. You know, playing a gig, or doing a photo session, or doing interviews. It was just very exhausting. And he left, and then, funnily enough, Jimmy Page joined on bass. He said, "Oh, I'd like to join now, but I'll play bass."
I'll come back. Yeah.
So he joined on bass, and Jimmy played bass for a few months, and then Jimmy and Chris swapped over. So Jimmy and Jeff both played lead guitar for a little while.
And so let's jump around a little bit, if I can. The Yardbirds are credited with, in many different people use different words. I'm going to say inventing psychedelic rock. A lot of things, whether it was punk rock or progressive or heavy metal, came from the Yardbirds sound. What helped you get to that sound? Because it was very innovative. I mean, you said it yourself. The Stones were being an innovative group, but you guys started a whole new trend.
Well, I think we wanted to change the way we were just a cover band, first of all. We were just playing these blues covers, and we wanted to make them a bit different, like Smokestack Lightning today. I mean, you probably heard it today. It's quite different from the original. All the guys in the band put ideas in to make it different. And it was Paul Samuel Smith's idea, the bass player, to do that big double up on the bass and the rundowns, and then we all put different ideas in. Jeff Beck, of course, had loads of sounds. He loved experimenting with buzzbox and pedals, while feedback and all that stuff. He just loved that sort of he still does, that futuristic sort of guitar sound. And so he put a lot in, and we all, I changed rhythms, and we all worked as a team to get to that, sound.
That's very cool. Now, one last question about the early years. I've heard this question a bunch, and I've heard multiple different answers. Yardbirds, hobos, prison yard, Charlie Parker. Where does the name come from?
Well, first time I heard it, we were playing one of our early shows over at Eel Pie Island, which is a place in Twickenham, which is a little island where all the bands used to play, the Rolling Stones and the Kinks and all these bands. And we were playing with a band called a harmonica player called Cyril Davis. And he was a fantastic harmonica player, and he used to work with Alexis Corner, guitar player, and that they sort of were responsible for lots of early blues in England too. And we played our set, and Cyril came up and said, "Oh, that was a very good set. What's the name of the band?" And he asked Keith Relf, the singer, and Keith said, "Oh, we're the Yardbirds," and that was the first time I'd ever heard that.
Like, yeah, we are. I don't know. Why the hell are we the Yardbirds? I don't know, but we are.
And I gather he read a Jack Kerouac book or something, and it was at the guys that used to, bum lifts on steam trains.
Trains, yeah.
Across the US, and used to live in the rail yards.
Yeah. Yardbirds that lived in the train yards, and yeah.
That's right.
The hobos, if you will.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, if you don't mind, let's jump to today. You're sitting next to a bunch of very fine musicians here. Tell me about the current build of the band and about these four fantastic gentlemen next to you here. And of course, you guys can speak up as well if you'd like.
Well, John here has been in the band longest. He's been playing with the band since we actually reformed. He dropped out for a little while. That was right back in 95, 96 when we reformed. We reformed because John and I had a little blues band, and we used to play in a pub in Shepherd's Bush in London, and we played with Top Topham originally, didn't we? Do you want to tell them the story?
Yeah, we had this great. I met Top by chance by selling this guitar in London. I'd come from a holiday from Detroit. Anyway, next thing I know, he's telling me about this blues band he's got together with Jim. And would I like to come and have dinner with them both? So I sure did, and one thing led to the other, and within about 2 months, I was young, I had no ties. I thought, well, let's go to London for a while and see what happens. And it turned out I stayed there for 25 years. So
an extended holiday.
Yeah. So I was very. I was very keen on the Yardbirds as a kid, or as a growing musician, and unfortunately, as I'm sure Yardbird fans, the heavy Yardbird fans know, for a long time you couldn't get many of their records except for bootleg copies and things that these guys never saw any money from, and you'd find very strange recordings, live recordings, and things. So that's what interested me the most. So I kind of did have a pretty deep knowledge, and it's been a gas to be a part of it and use that as part of this lineup, the continuous lineups of the band.
Right on.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we used to play in this pub anyway, and it built up, and this was in the 90s, and it was like the old days in the Crawdaddy, because it was all packed out, and we didn't get any money. They used to pass a hat round. Well, we loved playing the music, so we just played old blues covers, and then Jeff Beck and Paul and Chris used to come and see us.
Yeah.
And,
I can remember having to play in front of Jeff Beck. Like, oh my God, he's like right there. Mind you, wasn't the only. It was being London. He wasn't the only one who used to come around. We used to have Bill Wyman and Mick Ronson and all kinds of people come to this gig. It was like, it was a bit sort of intimidating to see Mick Ronson standing right at the corner pub with a pint in his hand. Okay, Mick. He was a lovely guy. Unfortunately, he passed away very shortly after we met him.
But we got a call from an agent in Lancashire, and he was booking out the Animals without Eric Burdon. It was Hilton Ballantyne and John Steele, and he said, "Oh, do you and Chris want to put the Yardbirds back together?" And we got inducted into the Hall of Fame in '92, and there were lots of.
You see him just throw that comment away, by the way? And we were inducted into the Hall of Fame in '92. But anyway, beyond that...
well, I'm very modest.
You are, but I'm not going to allow you to be. You can't just throw that comment away. That's the highest honor in rock and roll, sir. Come on.
Good for you. So we had a bit more going for us, and people asked us, "Oh, well, why don't you go back on the road? Why don't the Yardbirds play again?" And so I said to the agent, "Well, if Chris is into it, yeah, I'm interested. I'll be, So Chris said yes, and then we went from there. And we had John, and we had a couple of other guys, and we started off, and we did an experiment, played in a few festivals and things, and it was fun. We went down well, and we went from there.
And you're on your way. So take us down the line. Take us down the line here.
So, well, the other, apart from Godfrey here, Mike and Kenny, they came in at about the same time, 2015, and they'll tell you the story. But they were recommended by people I knew. John and I were going to come over with Topham originally, and we had another band of younger guys, and I just thought it would be nice to have American musicians. So we got recommendations. We recommended to Mike here, who's in a band called the Doughboys, and Kenny Aronson was recommended to me by a guitar player called John Paris in New York. And so it was recommendation, and I just came over, and we had another guitar player before Godfrey, a guy called Johnny A, and I knew Johnny, and then we reformed with the American lineup.
And I would like to attest to the power of social media, because our friend that Jim just mentioned, John Paris, a really great blues guitar player in New York City, someone who I email back and forth with about musical stuff, just things that we have mutual interest in. And in an email one day, he said to me, and by the way, I think the Yardbirds were looking for a new bass player. And I said, are you serious? And he said, you should contact Jim on Facebook. And so I did. And I just sent him a very short message saying, this is me, and you can Google and find out who I've played with for the last 40 years. Yardbirds are my favorite band on the planet since I'm 13 years old. And if you need a bass player, I'm available. I won't bore you with the details. Just Google me and you'll see my resume and you can find my website, whatever. And 3 days later, he got back to me and said, you've got the gig.
Yeah.
So no sweat, no muss, no fuss, no audition. The easiest gig I ever got with my favorite band on the planet.
He did Google you for 3 days. So
I'm gonna,
3 days Googling you. Yeah.
I'm going to interject because I wasn't privy to that conversation. But I'm sure when Jim must have checked out the resume, it's quite dumbfounding. Kenny's been with the highest ranks of musicians throughout his career, and I know that Kenny must have made all of those bands the bands that they were.
I've been very blessed to have played with some of the best rock guitar players on the planet in our generation.
Such as? Name some names.
Going back from the 70s. I mean, I've played with Leslie West and Rick Derringer and Brian Setzer and Dave Edmonds and Neil Schon and all, on and on and on. But the Yardbirds, when I was growing up and the English invasion started, Beatles and the Stones, I was 11 years old. I had an older brother who was a drummer, and I wanted to play drums. There was a Blue Sparkle Rogers drum kit in the house, and I'd come home from school every day, set it up, and have my 45 with the big, fat 45 changer on it, just dropping records after, and I would just be practicing. But it was, Paul Samuel Smith, the original Yardbirds bass player, was my hero. And the Yardbirds is why I wanted to play bass. It just took me 50 frickin' years to get the gig. But I'm quite happy that it happened when it happened. So,
I must say, I saw his resume, but the icing on the cake for me was Bob Dylan. So he played with Bob Dylan.
It's the most casual, humble group. Yeah, Bob Dylan, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah, Yardbirds, whatever. What about these two handsome men behind you, Jim? What about these two handsome guys behind you?
Mike, come on.
Yeah, hand him a mic. Somebody give that man a microphone back there. Not you, Jim. You keep your... Okay. Yeah, the other end. Yep.
Where do you want me to start?
So you were born at a much younger age?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, actually. I started getting involved in music right before high school. I had moved from Long Island to New Jersey the summer before ninth grade, so I knew nobody. And I just wanted to be in a band so bad, and I just wanted to play drums at that time. That was my main instrument. And I never had played drums, but I figured, well, I can get into the marching band in high school. So what I did was they had tryouts, and so I stood at the back of the line because everybody had to read music, which I didn't have a clue. I had no idea what they were doing.
Learning it by ear.
I listened to what the rest of these guys played, and I played it when I got up there just by memory, and that's how I got in the marching band.
By memory.
I had 15 minutes. So then from there, you know, when my parents saw that I was serious about playing drums, they got me my first drum set in 1963. I was 14 at the time. And I played drums for a while, and I played with various different bands. And then I got tired of being behind a drum set. So I said, I want to sing. I just want to be up front. I know I can entertain. You know, to me, music business is not just music business. It's entertainment.
Absolutely.
You know, and so I just wanted to get up front. You know, and so I did, and that's how I got in this band called the Doughboys. That we're just mixing our 6th studio album right now. I played with these guys in high school, and we're still doing stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
they were in the marching band too?
One of them was the drummer, because I was a singer in this band. But the English invasion really had a big effect on me. I mean, I grew up listening to. I had 2 older sisters and an older brother, so I always listened. I mean, Bo Diddley, from Bo Diddley, James Brown, Dion and the Belmonts, Danny and the Juniors. I mean, all of this stuff was just constantly, and I just loved seeing these guys. I loved listening to the music. And so when I finally got the chance, you know, when the British invasion started, and first it was the Beatles, then it was the Stones, then it was the Dave Clark Five, then it was the Animals, and then it was the Kinks, and then it was the Yardbirds, and all of these bands, and it was just, I was just blown away by what I was hearing. And I would, when I became singer in this band, I would take a shower on my way before I was getting ready to go to the gigs, and I would have the albums playing in my bathroom. I'd have the record player in my bathroom, and that's how I learned the lyrics to these songs while I'm taking a shower. But the Yardbirds were just, you know, it's an odd thing because as a singer, I was drawn to all the other singers in all these other bands. But for the Yardbirds, I just couldn't get past the guitars, would just blew my mind. And I was so enamored by the sounds and the things that those guys did. And so when my other band, the Doughboys, opened up for the Yardbirds back in 2011. We did 2 shows with them, one at BB King's in New York City and one in Sellersville, Pennsylvania at the theater. And our guitar player, Gar, had stayed in touch with you, Jim. And that's how the connection got made, because when Jim was looking to get American guys together, he called Gar and he says, you know any harmonica players or bass players? And so Gar said, call Mike. So I got the call from Mike Oberman, who was the booking agent for us at the time, and basically did the same kind of thing as Kenny, except I never really talked to Jim directly, but I was told...
You didn't Facebook him? You didn't send him a Facebook message? You didn't?
I don't do Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, I have somebody that does it for me.
He's a big deal. He's a big deal. Yeah.
Now, if I had to get on Facebook, I couldn't do it.
Thank God Jim can Google.
Yeah, so he apparently either remembered us opening up for him or just YouTubed some stuff. And next thing I know, I was told to come to rehearsal. And again, it was the same thing. I felt just like Kenny did. 50 years to get in this band. This is like incredible.
And here you are.
Yeah, Godfrey, I didn't know Godfrey at all, and That sounds awful.
What about Godfrey? No. You can do better.
No, I was going to say,
Yeah. So anybody who can Google, you can find.
it was actually our agent who recommended him to me, and she said, it's a woman called Margot Lewis, and she was the manager of Bo Diddley for years, for 30 years, and she managed to get Bo Diddley's rights back, which is fabulous. But he only had the benefit for a year, and then he died, unfortunately. Sure. But anyway, she recommended Godfrey. She said, I know a very good guitar player that would fit in really well, Godfrey Townsend. So, I didn't know him at all. I rang him up a couple of times, and I thought, well, he sounds okay. We'll try him out. But I always seem to fall on my feet. He's great.
So,
Thank you.
Godfrey, how does it feel to know nobody recommended you, sir?
I just got the gig without ever auditioning,
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
I got a phone call from Margot while I was out on a tour. I was on the West Coast. She was calling from the East Coast, and so the call came in about 7 a.m. in the morning, and I'm having my coffee on the tour bus. And she's asking me, hey, would you be interested in being in the Yardbirds?
Like, are you putting me on? Like, what? Yeah, who is it?
What's
Yeah.
something in this coffee? So I had a conversation with Jim and everything, and it seemed to work out well. I've been a Yardbird for 26 days now.
Congratulations.
And we're very happy about it. Seriously. He was a blessing.
He's a fledgling bird. He's just a wee baby bird.
But I mean, growing up, I of course it was the Beatles and all that stuff growing up. And then when you kind of deviated away from the standard stuff that everybody was listening to, there was a record store in my neighborhood called Action Records. And I used to just look in the window at the album covers, think, wow, those are pretty cool. That looks like it's a good album. And
Talk about a book by its cover right there, yeah.
so my dad my dad was an opera singer, and he was into a lot of music and browsing for records and stuff. So every Christmas he would say to me, make a list of like 10 albums that you want, and I'll buy you a few for Christmas. This way it's a surprise, and I know what to get you or whatever. And so I saw Led Zeppelin 2, Jimi Hendrix Smash Hits, Rolling Stones Through the Past Darkly, and George Harrison All Things Must Pass all came out that same year, and I got them for Christmas. So I first heard Jimmy Page and became a big fan. And then friends of mine would go, oh, you like Jimmy Page? You got to listen to this guy, Eric Clapton. So I got into Eric Clapton, and then more friends said, oh, you like Eric Clapton? You got to hear this guy, Jeff Beck.
It's a hell of a...
I kind of grew up learning how to play guitar, listening to those three guys.
I mean, there's worse influencers. There's worse influencers out there than...
Throw in Little Hendrix, too, as well.
You had to take a dip somewhere, right? Yeah.
Of course, Pete Townsend from The Who was a big influence as well. But that was pretty much who taught me how to play guitar, was those three guys. And then I got recommended for this gig, and I went, I don't really know a lot of their deep cut stuff. I know the hits or whatever, but... everybody, oh, you know all that stuff, and I'm like, no. But I
Start listening to it then, yeah.
I crammed it and I learned it all and applied my knowledge of each one of those guitar players to approaching each one of the songs that way,
Oh, that's phenomenal.
And it seems to be working.
How's he doing
out
so
good.
far? How's he doing so far?
Well, I'll say this as a guitarist and musician. Godfrey's also, he's played with John Entwistle in John Entwistle's band, and he's played with Jack Bruce. So not only has he got these things underneath his fingertips, he's also done it for real. So that comes as a big...
You left out Tiny Tim.
Oh, and Tiny Tim, yeah.
Somebody's tiptoed through the tulips once or twice.
Yeah. But
Did you have to wear a tutu?
No.
Okay, that's
but
good.
I had to tune his ukulele every night. God, it was so...
That's not a euphemism. All right, that's good. That's...
There goes that Disney special.
Yeah. Did you see Cheech and Chong? This is long past the Disney special, my friend. That went out the window when we booked them. I'm sure I speak for everyone here when I say, well, the current build of the Yardbirds hopefully stays the build of the Yardbirds because you guys are phenomenal. You guys are really, really wonderful. And if you don't mind, Jim, I know we're wrapping up on time here, but as you guys are rebuilding the Yardbirds and as you're choosing to come back out, you're choosing to play dates, there's got to be, do you feel a pressure to make sure that you are authentic to the Yardbirds sound, that you are authentic to what the Yardbirds were when you guys started? Or is it important to you to create a little bit of a different sound? Or how in your mind do you build it in your head?
Well, yeah, somebody else asked me a similar thing about responsibility, you know, for the sound. And, well, I just want it to be really well played and, you know, pretty authentic. But there's a bit of room for improvisation and all that. And the guys are great at doing that as well. And there's a good chemistry. You know, there's a good feeling in the band, and they're all very, well, as you heard, they're all big fans, so that they're very honourable to the Yardbird spirit, which is great for me. And I just have to, you know, be careful I don't overdo it. You know, I'm not getting any younger, so just have to.
You're still doing pretty good if you're on the stage, my friend.
That's right.
And speaking of that, if you could take us home with, you just wrote a book. Did you not? Yeah, you recently wrote a book. Tell us a little bit about the book. What's the title?
Well, it's called Nobody Told Me.
Nobody Told Me.
It was a little bit of an in-joke about, you know, when you go to a theatre and you say to the caretaker, oh, we're loading in our gear, you know, and the guy says, oh, nobody told me, you know.
Trust me, if you're behind the scenes of this business, you hear that a lot. We need to go ahead and, but no one told me. It's every time you do it.
But also, nobody told me how it was going to be, and nobody told me I was going to be still doing this, you know, 50, 60 years later from when we started. It was amazing.
And where can people find this book?
Well, you can get it on, we have some, not a huge amount, but we have some here. You can get it on Amazon and Lulu. It's actually published by a self-publishing house called Lulu, lulu.com.
Wonderful. Nobody Told Me, and check it out if you have not checked it out yet. Do me a favor, my friends. I know you submitted some questions, and I apologize, but this is a chatty group, and I wanted to keep them chatting and find out more about each of them. So forgive me for not getting to your questions, but I'm sure you can understand. When you have the Yardbirds willing to chat, you chat. Help me in thanking this fantastic group for spending some time with us today. Absolutely. You guys are world class. As part of the Flower Power Cruise, we've appreciated having you with us. And look at this right here. This should tell you. And for those of you on TV, thank you for watching. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, my friends. Loud as you can. The Yardbirds.